Betrayal was unexpected when I got home. Max reflected to himself that spending the evening in the New York airport, where he was watching the boarding procedure for what he hoped would be his trip back to Charlotte, was not the most pleasant way to spend the evening. Over the course of several decades, Max, along with his two sisters, established and ran a little pharmaceutical business that was initially established by their father. It was his father who had created a number of excellent pharmaceuticals that were only used infrequently. These drugs helped the company become successful, but they did not provide much possibility for expansion. Max's parents had passed away, and he had spent the last few days in New York negotiating the sale of the company to a major pharmaceutical concern. His parents had passed away. Today, Max and his team of solicitors and brokers successfully concluded the sale, and they have now delegated the task of completing the documentation to the solicitors. Despite Max's best efforts, it appeared that he would not be able to make it home tonight. There were no available seats on the final flight of the day to Charlotte, and he was the third person on the cancellation list. He did not call his wife, Camila, because he was at a loss for words over what he should say to her. He sat at the bar where he could watch the gate, and drank his second gin and tonic. He was thinking about the agreement and the money that he and his sisters would split. The contract was worth more than $10 million for him, and a well-compensated transition phase with Big Pharma meant that he and Camille would be able to start a new lifestyle together. By the time the transaction with the pharmaceutical business was finalized, their twin daughters had already left the nest, or at the very least were on their way to doing so. Both of them were in their junior year of college at Duke, where the tuition was eating him alive. However, all of this would change. During this time, the procedure of boarding was coming to a conclusion, and the agents at the gate were assisting the final passengers in boarding the respective aircraft. Then, a seemingly insignificant miracle took place, the sign for boarding changed, and Max noticed that his name was added to the list of people waiting to board. He tossed the money on the bar, waved to the bartender, who gave him a thumbs up, grabbed his briefcase and duffel bag, and then raced out of the establishment. It was shortly told to him and two other passengers by the official at the gate that the group of 4 passengers who had checked in remotely had not turned up, so they were given seats. The agent then issued him his boarding pass. Max was able to make his way down the plane with his new friends, and when he arrived at the gate, he discovered that he was seated in the first-class section. He thought to himself, "A good sign," he said, "I got on the flight. I'm sitting in first class, heading home a day early. This may mean that the pharmaceutical deal will indeed close." The boarding door closed as he boarded, and the flight attendant asked him if he wanted something to drink. "I'm sitting in first class." He felt as like he had deserved another drink as they taxied to the airport, so he drank another gin and tonic and then fell asleep, dreaming of a future for him and Camila in which they would always be able to afford to fly first class. The jolt of landing was enough to wake him up. In the end, he was able to reach the taxi stop and take a taxi back to his house. He had driven his pickup truck to the airport a few days before, but now he was fatigued, a little drunk, and it was really late, even too late to contact Camila to come fetch him. He had driven his pickup truck to the airport. Given that they resided a few miles outside of Charlotte, the duration of the cab ride was sufficient for him to fall back asleep throughout the journey. When they arrived, the driver was the one who had to rouse him awake. After making the payment and leaving a substantial tip, Max exited the taxi with a little bit of a sluggishness. Both the day and the evening were filled with a lot of activity. During the time that the taxi was leaving, he was already contemplating the possibility of getting into bed with Camila, and he switched his attention to the house. A gold Mercedes was parked in the driveway in front of his side of the garage, and it was the sight that completely roused him from his sleep. He was completely roused from his nightmares. It appeared to him that the automobile was a particularly trendy Mercedes, but then again, he thought that all Mercedes were fashionable. At that point, the home was completely dark. Max had been standing there for a few minutes, and it was well past midnight at that point. Around noon, he had a conversation with Camille from the office of his attorney, and she did not mention anything about people who arrived late at night. In an effort to create a happy scenario that would enable him to snuggle up to Camille, who was warm and drowsy, in just a few minutes, he made an effort to avoid thinking about the inconceivable. Nevertheless, his thinking did not function in such manner. In order to get to the door, he made his way gently via the passageway that connected the house and the garage. It was unlocked, and he entered the peaceful house. He proceeded to stroll even more slowly through the kitchen and up the stairs to the bedroom that he and Camila shared together. It appeared that Max had not anticipated any visitors, as the entrance to the bedroom was left open. After Max entered, the door was promptly shut. If there was any other way to put it, it would be that his brain had ceased functioning. He stopped breathing, and it appeared as though his heart had stopped beating as well. What he saw was something that he could not even fathom. Camille was sleeping naked, spread out on her side of the bed, with one arm wrapped around the man who was also sleeping and even smiling slightly in his sleep. Max remained in that position for what seemed like an interminable amount of time, but gradually, his brain began to function normally. The two of them snorted together as he gazed once more at Camilla's hand that was resting across the man. This caused Max's heart to break. All the way up until now, he had taken pleasure in hearing Camille snore. Max was thinking that she was snoozing softly, almost like she was purring. It was his assumption that her snoring indicated that she was completely secure, deep in the restful sleep that resulted from the fact that she shared a bed and a life with Max. It was common for him to drop off to sleep with that gentle purring sound in his ears. Nevertheless, that was the last time he would ever hear her snoring again, and he would never again sleep close to her. In spite of the fact that his heart was broken, Max started to reconsider. It was on the chair that Max had sat on hundreds of times that he spotted the man's clothes nicely folded and lying on the chair himself. Max felt a smoldering anger beginning to erupt within of him. After he had pulled his pants up, he took out his wallet and the keys to his car, and then he paused for a moment to think about it. It was possible for him to retrieve the tennis racket from the closet in the bedroom and use it to beat the other individual. He made the decision that he could also defeat Camille. Max may experience significant difficulties in the long run as a result of both of these behaviors, despite the fact that they are rewarding in the short term. An additional concept started to take shape in his head. In an effort to get some incriminating photographs, he pulled out his mobile phone. After Max had done snapping images, he went on to gather all of his clothing and footwear. This occurred as the idea began to develop and expanded. He was a big guy. Max was 5'10" inches tall and weighed about 160 pounds. The man looked at least 4 or 5 inches taller and perhaps 50 pounds heavier. A tennis racket may not have been a good idea even in the short term. Taking his clothes and shoes in his hands, Max took one last look at his wife, his loving, beloved wife, the mother of his precious daughters, and hardened his heart against the love that had fueled him for more than 20 years. He left the bedroom still without tears and headed back down the stairs to the outside. The key fob beeped, and the Mercedes doors opened. Max put his briefcase and duffel bag inside and slid into the driver's seat. He was never a fan of fancy cars, but when he got into the Benz, he realized that he liked it. He figured out the controls, put the car in gear, and drove off. After about a mile, Max pulled over and looked at the asshole's wallet, the usual things, some money, business cards that identified him as Franklin Thompson, a senior sales manager at a local Mercedes dealership, a driver's license that showed a Charlotte address. If he had family there, Max figured he could cause some real trouble for them, of course, and maybe Camille too. But at the moment, Max was exhausted and headed to the nearest motel to get some sleep. Camilla Tronda was a very careful person. She knew that she was not as smart as her husband Max, but thanks to her caution, her affair with Franklin Thompson lasted almost 5 months without Max suspecting anything. Max was still in New York, she thought as she lay in bed with Franklin the next morning. He was good in bed, maybe not as good as Max, but out of bed, he could not compete with her husband. Too much like a car salesman, she thought, coming to the conclusion that it was time to end this affair. Franklin was becoming too possessive. He wanted to spend the night with her, and she allowed it, but that would be the last time she did that. She planned to spend the rest of her life with Max, and to have a strange man in their marital bed, even if Max would never know about it, was still too disrespectful. She would call Franklin later today and gently but sternly tell him that their affair was over. Then she headed to the shower. Back in the bedroom, she was getting dressed when Franklin returned from the shower with a towel around his waist. Following a brief period of standing, he posed the following question to Camilla: "Where did you take my clothes?" "What is it?" "You won't find anything that I moved anyplace." "Where are your garments, exactly?" "Which of my garments?" "In what way did you make use of them?" "However, there are no clothes in this chair, despite the fact that I folded them exactly here." "When you went to the guest room, did you bring them with you?" "Someone must be present in this location." "I am, I. He muttered it as he made his way back down the hallway to the guest room, and then he came back right away. No, there is nothing there. His voice trailed off as he attempted to fathom the absence of his clothes. Perhaps you left everything downstairs when we came in last night, Camilla inquired with a little bit of impatience, under the impression that they had both had an excessive amount of alcohol the night before. No, I am certain that I did not. Franklin responded, but I think I'll go take a look, as he exited the bedroom. He soon returned, sprinting up the stairs, and then he went back inside. Camilla. You, Camilla. Not only is my car not there, but neither are my clothes in the basement. The previous evening, someone was here, and they stole my car in addition to my clothes. Oh, I can't believe it. How are things going? Sorry, what do you mean? Camilla tried to comprehend what Franklin was saying. How could his clothes and car go missing? The two of them stayed in the house all night. Could someone have gotten inside? Suddenly, Camilla collapsed on the bed. It was Franklin's turn to ask, what? What if it turned out to be Max? Franklin, what if he came home from New York while we were sleeping? Camilla struggled to compose an answer, but she found it difficult to breathe, let alone talk. What if he came home when we were? What if he stole your belongings as well as your vehicle? Franklin mumbled, oh, as he collapsed onto the bed next to Camille. You need to find out where he is. It is possible that he is the culprit. However, if he is still in New York, this indicates that a burglar of some kind has broken into the house, which means that we need to contact the authorities. I need to retrieve my belongings as well as my vehicle. Oh, this automobile is so damned. His voice drifted off as he envisioned a future that could range from being worse than horrible to being absolutely catastrophic. If we call the police, they will want to know who owns it, and it's in my wife's name for some damn tax reason, he said as he pondered the potential outcomes. I'll give his office a ring. Camille took out her phone and dialed Max's office number. Even though it was not yet 8 o'clock, Max's secretary answered the phone right away. His secretary arrives very early, and she must know where he is, Camille said. Can I be of assistance to you at Max Trunk's office? It's Camille here, Sheila. Hey there. I am aware that it is still very early, and I am unsure of where Max is. You didn't get a call from him yesterday night, have you heard anything from him since then? Camilla, it is still early, and I am aware that the crew in New York worked late yesterday. You should know that. It is likely that they will begin their work later than usual today. I had a conversation with Max yesterday around 6 o'clock, right before I went home. He informed me that they were making good progress and might reach a deal today. That is encouraging to hear. So, he is still in New York, right? Yes, I am certain that he is. And I anticipate hearing from him as soon as they all return to the lawyer's office. Do you want me to ask him to call you? Yes, please, but only if he has time. I am aware of how significant this transaction is. Congratulations, and I will see you soon. Camille went to Franklin after they had finished their conversation and said, Max is still in New York, so we should probably call 911 and report a break-in and car theft, Camille. What are we going to tell them? The fact that your lover's automobile was taken from your driveway and his clothing were taken from your bedroom is a shocking revelation. That is to say, what the? This is a terrible situation for us. All right, I realize what you mean. Let's talk about it, shall we? I'd like to take you home and leave you there, sounds good to me. In order to make the thefts appear as though they occurred while your wife was driving the children to school, you put on a disguise and report them. It is possible that you do not report stolen clothing, this may be more difficult to explain than a car that has been taken. Yes, except that yesterday I told my wife that I was going to Atlanta for a meeting about the new Mercedes S-Class, and I wouldn't be home until noon. All right, but we can wait until maybe noon, which is when you'll be back nonetheless, she said. Your automobile was stolen while you were at home because you drove home, forgot to take your keys out of the car because it was only a short stop before you went to the dealership, and your car was taken. I might be able to pull it off. Let's assume I forgot to take my wallet out of the car, and it ended up being taken as well. We may also spend a few hours hanging around here, perhaps we will find ourselves in need of another shower, and we could take it together, Franklin. Ah, all right, I guess so. I'm sorry, but I need to phone my employer to request a sick leave. Camille worked as a paralegal in a small law firm. The work was okay, if a bit boring. She went out into the hallway to make a call and returned to the bedroom to find Franklin back in bed. She was tempted, but after thinking about Max and her recent decision to end the affair, she decided to say no. "Franklin," she remarked without making the least attempt to remove her garments, "I believe that it is time to put an end to this. Although we had a successful run, you should know that it could have been Max who won last night. It's a good thing that it turned out to be a villain. Let us go out and look for some clothes, and then perhaps we will go to a restaurant for breakfast." The moment Franklin glanced at her, he considered the possibility of trying to persuade her, but in the end, he came to the conclusion that she was correct. Although they were fortunate, they shouldn't go too far. Yes, he concurred, smiling to himself as he recalled that another gorgeous mother of middle age frequently visited the vehicle store. It was a good run, he said. Consequently, how about some garments? It turned out to be not so simple. Franklin was 50 pounds heavier and 4 inches taller than Max. Camille finally found a pair of tattered old sweatpants that seemed to fit Franklin after making a few V-cuts at the waist. She then tied some strings around his waist to hold up his sweatpants. She also found a sweatshirt that had turned pink when it was sloppily washed in the washing machine. She trimmed the sleeves and cut some more at the armholes, and Franklin had his outfit. She wanted to make. Earlier that morning, around the time Franklin discovered his clothes and car were missing, Max pulled into the driveway of the address listed on Franklin's driver's license. There was a nice house, a small bicycle leaning against the wall of the garage. Max sat in the car for a while, thinking, wondering, but still without tears. His night at the motel passed quickly, and he didn't go out for a run until dawn. He was surprised that he didn't feel worse, perhaps he was still in shock. He walked. "I have 911 on my phone, and I'm ready to press send if you don't tell me my husband is okay, Mom," the woman said as she shut the door in his face before he could say anything else. She then opened the door again a few seconds later while holding her mobile phone in her hand. "There is a picture on my phone that shows your husband and my wife having a nighttime bedtime together, naked and sound asleep. For the record, I do not believe that there is anything wrong with either your husband or my wife. I am being completely honest. In the event that you wish to call 911, you should phone 911, and I will just wait in the car. Wait here, I'll be right back," she said, turning away and heading back to what Max assumed was the kitchen. He heard voices, hers and at least one of the children. She returned, handing him a cup of coffee, and said, "I hope you drink black coffee." She had been looking at each other for a moment before her face stopped falling, and she opened the door to let him in. She had started to say something when they both heard Mommy coming from the kitchen. "After I have finished getting the children ready for school, I will then take them. I am concerned that these days I trust you more than I trust my husband. You are welcome to remain here until I return, at which point we can have a conversation. Is that all right?" Max responded to the question. "I'm afraid we're in the same boat," he said as he sat down in the living room. Shortly after that, a woman appeared with 2 children. She introduced him as Dad's friend and then walked out the door with them. Max just sat there, drank some coffee that wasn't very good, and considered calling his office, but ultimately decided to just sit there. As soon as the woman came back, she hurried up the stairs in complete silence. A few minutes later, she came back down looking better, with her hair combed and her lips slightly tinted. She offered her hand to Max, and as they shook hands, she introduced herself and said, "I am sorry for the recent commotion. My name is Molly Thompson, and I am currently married to Franklin Thompson, who is currently involved with the woman you are married to at the moment." When Max heard her line of words, he couldn't help but chuckle, and it was a refreshing experience to laugh. "You are absolutely right about all of the current events that are taking place at the moment. His name is Max Tronder, and his wife's present name is Camilla Tronder." He then proceeded to tell what had occurred the previous evening, and he noticed that Molly's tears began to flow. "I am going through the process of getting a divorce from Camilla, and I am confident that the photographs will assist me in obtaining a fair settlement. In the event that you believe you might require them, I can also send them to your phone." When Molly responded, "Yes, I think I should have them," Max looked at her with lifeless eyes. He reached for his phone, but he stopped when she whispered, "Wait, don't send them to me. In the event that I saw them, I will never be able to get those images out of my head. If I ever find myself in need of them, I will be able to contact you." In response to this, Max stated, "Right, of course," but then went on to say, "I probably won't be at my current job for very long, and I most certainly won't be living in my current house anymore. I am going to provide you with the contact information of my attorney. Whenever you require photography or any other assistance in a divorce situation, you are free to get in touch with him." After saying, "Okay, thank you," Molly said, "But what should we do right now? Are you going to return the vehicle? Are you going to wait for Franklin, and then attempt to beat him up upon you? You are familiar with him, despite the fact that he has gained a little weight, he is a rather large individual. For whatever reason, he was meant to be in Atlanta yesterday for a vehicle meeting, and he was going to stay there overnight. This afternoon, he ought to be at his residence. Even though I've never driven a Mercedes before, I must admit that I have a certain fondness for this vehicle." At that moment, Max responded with a grin, "I believe I will keep it until someone forces me to return it." Molly and Max were both in need of as much release as they could get their hands on. Molly laughed and said, "Your husband, and I must say his name to me is Mayhav." Max joined in on the laughter. "Actually, the car is registered in my name," Molly explained to me. "For some tax reason, I think more depreciation Franklin, or should I say Mayhav, put it in my name since I drive more than he does." She took a moment to reflect, then continued, "You know, since I own this car, I can issue you a permit to drive, and the cops can call me to confirm if you get pulled over." Molly was obviously still thinking out the strategy, so Max did not speak to her. "And one more thing," she said, "there have been a lot of break-ins in our area lately." Max loved the concept, but he did not respond. "Franklin's keys and clothes are in your possession. In the event that the key that we are concealing in the backyard is not there when he arrives, he may attempt to break into the house. If our security system is configured to operate in the instant alert mode, he will garner the attention of the authorities, which will be very fascinating." "Molly, I think I'm falling in love again, you are wonderful," Max expressed his opinion. "All right, okay, try to calm down. Franklin is eagerly anticipating his return till the children and I return home from school this afternoon. He can't wait to see us. Nevertheless, I am able to pick them up and then spend some time at the park. Allow him to get into even more trouble by giving him more time to do so. Please keep me updated on everything that takes place, particularly if he does end up getting into difficulties with the law enforcement. Remember to give me a call when you need your car back. I would prefer that you not get into any kind of difficulty. You and I both need to leave this place as soon as possible, we will be finished now." Molly gave Max the permission form, and he thought that she would fetch the secret key, set the alarm, and go for the remainder of the day. Max drove off in a lovely gold Mercedes, thinking how much the same one, only in a nicer color, would cost. He made his departure in the Mercedes. Camilla and Franklin actually arrived at Franklin's house around noon. Camilla dropped him off and quickly rushed off, as if she was trying to avoid further infection. Franklin walked to his front door, hoping that it might not be locked because Molly was home, but at the same time afraid that she might be there. Of course, it was locked, and he hurried around the house to the rock in the backyard where they kept the spare key, but the stone disappeared. "Oh," he muttered, looking at the back of his house, wondering if he should break in. He tried to open the back door, but it was also locked, so he decided that he really had no choice but to force his way inside. He looked at the windows along the back wall, wondering which one would be best to break. He stopped at the window into the family room. The window was the largest at the back, and breaking it would give him more room to enter the house. He broke a branch from the tree he was about to trim and examined the window. Since he was barefoot, he needed a way to get through the broken window glass, which he could break. He pulled 2 chairs from the back porch and placed them next to the window. He thought he could climb over the chairs to avoid the glass and then just be careful when he entered the living room. A few deep breaths, and he was ready to go. Franklin threw a branch through the window of the family room, and it shattered with a satisfying crack. It was immediately followed by the wailing sound of the home alarm system siren, which was even more unfortunate for Franklin. To make matters even more unfortunate, a police car just happened to be driving down his street at that moment. Molly had called the local police station that morning to complain about potential break-ins in their area. Franklin muttered, "Damn, damn, damn," as he attempted to quickly climb over the chairs in order to enter the house and disable the damn security system. However, he was unable to do so in time. Police immediately come to a halt and exit the residence in a calm and deliberate manner. "Throw your hands in the air." Franklin looked back and saw two policemen with pistols. He did as he was told and only cut his legs slightly as he climbed from the chairs and backed away. "Officers, I can explain," he began to say as one of the cops placed his hands behind his back and detained him. The policeman ignored his attempt to explain himself and read out his rights. The policeman then asked, "Do you want to say anything?" "I am sorry, but I do not have a key to my house." Yes, this is also my home." Franklin responded, "So, I broke in to get some clothes and call my office." The police officers were gazing at Franklin's tracksuit, possibly believing that he was wearing clown clothing, when one of them inquired whether he had any identification with him. "Oh, no, not at this time. To put it simply, I have misplaced my car along with all of my belongings, including my clothes, and I just need to get inside so that I can get some proper clothes." "Sir, how did you let your car go missing?" "In any case, I stayed at a friend's place the night before, and when I woke up this morning, the automobile was nowhere to be seen." "It simply was not the case." "Do you have any information regarding its unexplained disappearance?" The police officer mentioned that it was possible that you had left it in a pub somewhere. He didn't want to admit where he was or why he didn't report the car missing, but he also didn't want to go to jail for trying to break into his own home, and the handcuffs were incredibly uncomfortable. Franklin was at a loss for what to do. Then, he came up with a solution that had a chance of being successful. "You are free to call my wife. She is able to recognize me, and it would be helpful if you could bring me to my office. I can ask someone there to assist me in getting some clothes," I said. It was a lot better than going to jail, but he knew he would have to put up with a lot of crap at the dealership. One of the police officers grabbed Molly's phone number from Franklin and went to call her. Franklin was able to hear the portion of the discussion that occurred between the police and Molly with Molly. "I am Ree from the Charlotte Police Department, and I am here to report to you. This is the address that he provided for us. It is the address. Moreover, there is a man in this room who asserts that he is your husband. Because he had misplaced his clothing, he attempted to break into your home." "Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, ma'am, we will, of course, carry out this plan." He then switched his attention back to Franklin, and thanked her for her assistance. According to the woman, her husband is currently in Atlanta, and she believes that anyone who breaks into her home must be a bandit. It is her desire that we will put you behind bars and then dispose of the key. However, the officers were leading Franklin to their patrol car so that they could take him to the station, but Franklin was on the verge of tears. While all was going on, Camille arrived at her workplace half a day late, but she was determined to make up for the time she had missed. She continued to worry about Max, wondering about the fact that she had not yet received a response from him. She called his cell phone, but no one answered. She then called his office once more. "Hello, Sheila, and Camille from once more. In light of the fact that I have not had any communication from Max, I am beginning to feel a bit concerned about him." "What about you?" "No, I do not have anything new to share. I suppose this indicates that he is still in New York with the attorneys, but it is not typical of him to not call. I will phone there and check on him, and either he or I will call you back in a few minutes. You do appear to be a bit concerned, so I will call there." "That's fine, that's great, Sheila. Your secretary skills are unparalleled in the entire world." Camille did, in fact, get a call back quite a few minutes after the initial call. "The name of this person is Sheila. During my conversation with one of the secretaries working at the law office, she informed me that Max had departed quite late the day before in the hopes of catching the final flight to Charlotte. In order to learn how Max was doing, I called him on his mobile phone. I was able to speak with him, and he requested that I inform you that he will call you at a later time." "Fine, thank you, Sheila," Camille said before disconnecting the call. A snake started to grow in the depths of her stomach. Max hung up after speaking with Sheila. He was driving a gold Mercedes to see a divorce lawyer who was recommended to him by Fred Thomas, his longtime business lawyer. He trusted his business lawyer and hoped that he could trust his divorce lawyer. "It is Mr. Please have a seat, Thunder." "Thank you." Miss Reinhardt will be with you in a moment, the secretary told him. He sat down, feeling somewhat reassured by the lawyer's office, which had furniture that was not expensive but did not look cheap either. Before he had the opportunity to worry any further, a woman, who was 50 years old, somewhat plump, and had obviously dyed her hair red, entered the waiting room. "It is Mr. Is it Hale?" Max stood up and nodded, and she added, "My name is Anna Reinhardt. When Fred called, he instructed me to take the utmost care of you in every way imaginable. Please come into my office, so that we can discuss the predicament you are in." Max followed her into a nice but not luxurious office, took coffee from the secretary, and then told his story. He discovered that his wife had been cheating on him, he wanted a divorce, and he also wanted to protect his assets, particularly the proceeds from the sale of his company and his sister's company. He skipped the part of the story that concerned the golden Mercedes, even though he had a feeling that Anna might find it funny. "Max, would you mind if I referred to you as that?" In response, he nodded, and she said, "And my name is Anna. The good news is, in light of your circumstances, this is a rather positive piece of news. Fred informed me that you and your sisters took ownership of your business before to your marriage to your wife, which means that your shares are deemed to be distinct property. In other words, your wife does not have any rights to the shares of your firm or to the proceeds from the sale of those shares. In spite of this, you must ensure that the shares and the proceeds from the sale are kept separate from any joint account that you and your wife may have. I believe that this is accurate. When it comes to our home, our retirement assets, and other such matters, what? I'm sorry to say that I don't have very good news for you. Due to the fact that your income is significantly larger than hers, you will be required to make child support payments for a number of years. Through raising the amount of alimony, it is likely that we will be able to avoid making any contributions to the retirement account entirely. I am aware that it is not appealing, but the discomfort in the short term makes it possible to prevent what is typically more difficult, having to divide your retirement funds in the decades to come. Additionally, since your children are attending college, there will be no child support payments. Are you sure that you don't mind being responsible for the remaining costs associated with their college education? Certainly, that is appropriate. What about the house, exactly? You and your wife must decide what you want. Depending on the current appraised value, you could choose to sell it, and divide the proceeds, or you could decide that one of you will buy the other's half of the property. After seeing what I did last night, I am certain that I do not want to purchase this house. I don't think Camila can afford to buy my share, so I guess that means selling. All right, I'll take care of the papers. This way, the divorce petition is a relatively typical form, so I can have it ready for you tomorrow early if you'd like, so we can serve it to her tomorrow afternoon. God, that's pretty fast. Max, please pay attention to what I have to say. If there's a potential for you and your wife that some counseling or simply a little time could. No, truly, it's simply a shock for me. I mean, that was less than 24 hours ago. I was happy, I couldn't wait to get home to my wife and tell her the good news about the sale of the company. And now I'm sitting here talking about filing for divorce. But we must move forward. I'll figure out how to deal with this. Okay, but if you change your mind, just call me, and we can work things out. Max thanked her, paid the advance, and then left the office. As he walked back to the gold Mercedes, he wondered a little bit about what was going on with what he had witnessed the night before. This brought to his mind that he had informed his secretary that he would call Camille. Camille answered the phone in her office at the legal firm where she worked. "Camila, this is Max. You called and looked for me." "Oh, Max, thanks for calling. I missed you." "You, where are you?" "I'm here in Charlotte, Camille." When did you get back?" The snake deep in her belly raised its head. "Last night, Camila. I got back last night, and the snake bit a little hard." Camila fell back in her chair. She knew she had to keep on this discussion, but she could scarcely breathe, let alone speak. "Camila, I'm hanging up now." She managed to squeak out, "No, Max, no," during the conversation. Please, can we meet somewhere? I need to see you, and just see you for a few minutes." Max wavered in his decision. Over the course of 20 years, this woman was the subject of his affection, the mother of his kids, and the person who held the utmost significance in his life. Okay, Camila. The center cafe at 6. The snake went much further in its bite. A long time ago, when they were both hanging out with friends, Camila and Max had first met at the center cafe. Camila had no choice but to agree with Max's statement. Since then, this cafe had developed into a place that held a unique significance for them. And at this moment, she was terrified. The question is, why did Max advise this? But it was necessary for her to accept. Max, I'll see you there. And please listen, I'm sorry, and I love you. Max immediately disconnected his phone. While Camila remained there and sobbed, the snake started biting her more and more. Ahead of schedule, Camila arrived at the cafe. Max had not arrived at that point. She sat there, contemplating what a terrible person she was, and ordered a glass of wine to drink. When she was in college, she had her first experience with sexual encounters with large and powerful football players. She had a lot of fun playing football while she was in high school, but it was the college football players that held her down and made her feel like she had no control over the situation. She believed that she had conquered this desire to feel helpless before to the arrival of Max. Max was powerful in bed, loving, a wonderful father to the daughters, and a reliable provider. He was everything she needed. If it weren't for the flight back to Charlotte from the West Coast, that would have been sufficient material for the day. During the weekend before Max's meetings began, she joined him to a pharmaceutical business where he was touring in an effort to promote a new medication. Although she was traveling home by herself on an overnight trip, she was seated next to a huge man who turned out to be the coach of a local National Football League side. In the midst of their conversation and excessive drinking, she eventually dozed off with her head resting on his shoulder. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw his hand tucked in between her legs by her skirt. She was aware that she ought to have yelled or at the very least pulled his hand away while she was thinking about that night. The sensation of guilt that Camila didn't recall feeling was just satisfaction that Max didn't return until later that week, when both she and her body had recovered from the injury. However, Camila did not believe that she had done that. Because this coach had only been in Charlotte for one season, they were filled with a sense of guilt. Camille had the potential to become a faithful wife once more if he had not introduced her to a forward from the practice squad before he left that position. Although she was not a well-known figure and was not even a novice, she was just as powerful and commanding in bed as the coach was. Camila was genuinely appreciative when she was given these responsibilities. Finally, after a period of time had passed, the guilt became apparent. Due to her desire to maintain her loyalty to Max, she decided to end her relationship with her lover. By the time their daughters left for college, Camille believed that she had ended her unfaithful behavior. She had a deep affection for Max, and she took pleasure in the additional time they were able to spend together while the daughters were gone. When Max did something kind for her, however, the snake made its way in. It was time for her to get a new vehicle, and he suggested that she go with a luxury vehicle as her new vehicle of choice. Furthermore, she made the regrettable decision to visit the Mercedes store, which is when she was introduced to Franklin Thompson. While he did not sell her a Mercedes, he did push all the proper buttons in order to get her into bed, and she was aware that this was not the right thing to do. This is also incorrect due to the fact that Franklin was not very good in bed. Due to the fact that she had been successful in concealing her previous indiscretions, she believed that the marriage was still intact. Now, however, she and Max loved one another more than they ever had before, and she desired to abide by their commitment. Refraining from having sexual relations with a large moron was the correct course of action. Even if Max hadn't found out about them, Max's decision to let Franklin spend the night in his married bed would have been a catastrophic error. On the other hand, she had decided to let him, and now she was terrified of the horrible price that she may have to pay. Camille looked up and caught a glimpse of Max standing there. "Hello, Camila." The fact that he appeared to be considerably older than he did before he came to New York was apparent to her, and she was aware that it was her responsibility. They continued to get bitten by the snake that was in her tummy. "Hi, Max. Thank you for being here. I don't even know how to begin to say how sorry I am." Taking a seat, he asked, "Would it be possible for me to ask a few questions?" "Oh, Max, please no. If we have any chance, questions and answers will simply kill that chance. Max, we should run away, just for a few days, to some island in the Caribbean where we can be reunited, where we can hug each other." "Camila, please, you're delusional. If you can't answer my questions, I'll get up and leave now." The snake continued to bite, but Camille was aware that she had to put up with the discomfort and allow Max to express himself in the manner that he desired. There is a possibility that he could emerge from his wrath and find a way to reconcile with the other person. "Okay, Max, ask me anything." A peculiar question, she thought to herself. "Do you know what time I got home last night?" No, not really." "It had to be after," she said before she stopped talking. "And do you know what I saw when I got home, when I went upstairs to our bedroom, or should I say, what used to be our bedroom?" Was the next question that he would go on to ask, and she was aware of what it would be. "Yes, Max. I am aware of what you must have witnessed, and I am absolutely certain that it must have been one of the most upsetting things you have ever witnessed in your entire life. Max, I am pleading with you to please pay attention to what I have to say because I am well aware that it is entirely my fault that you witnessed this. The fact that I will not fight for the divorce that you desire is something that I deeply regret. Camila, if you would like to, please be quiet. What is the next question that needs to be answered? How many men have been around since we got married? If you are lying, or if I have reason to believe that you are lying, I will get up and leave." The first thing that came to Camila's mind was to tell a lie, the second idea was that lying was fraught with danger, and the third thought was that the marriage was probably already gone. "It's 3, Max. My regret is that I ever had the opportunity to meet these 3 individuals. After looking into your eyes, I believe I am able to realize that our marriage is gone, and I am able to comprehend this. You are deserving of someone more qualified than I am. However, I can understand if you no longer wish to have any interaction with me. I am willing to do practically anything in order to give us another chance. Make a call to the attorney, Camila. You will receive divorce papers tomorrow. They will be served to you." After getting up, Max departed. Camila sat there, unable to even begin to cry at first because she was so surprised. In the midst of her contemplation of what Max had just spoken, the snake that was biting her in the stomach became so intense that she began to cry. As Max left the cafe, he reflected on the fact that he and Camila had first met there 20 years earlier. He also pondered whether or not this particular encounter would be the final time that they would ever have any kind of personal interaction. Hearing your wife state that she had sex with other guys and seeing her in their bed with that lout, Franklin, was the kind of intimacy that he thought was the worst form of intimacy. He thought this with a bitterness in his heart. The snoring of her, for the love of God. How am I ever going to be able to move on from this? Since they had been together for 20-odd years, it was possible that he could deal with 3 faceless men. Perhaps, with some counseling and a great deal of embarrassment on her part, she could be able to change her behavior. However, he would never be able to get over anything that happened in their bed. After the dissolution of his marriage, he eventually broke down in tears when he was seated in that damn gold Mercedes. Max eventually became aware of the fact that it was already growing dark as time went on. In the midst of blowing his nose and wiping his cheeks, he reflected about the words that Molly Thompson had spoken earlier that morning, which seemed like a dozen years ago. Instead of sending her images of her husband having sexual relations with Camila, she instructed him not to do so. In her opinion, if she were presented with visual evidence, it would be far more challenging for her to forgive the person. Max made the decision to give her a call, where he would also discuss this idea with her and inquire about the situation with Mercedes. "Hello?" Molly asked in response to the phone call. "Molly, this is Max Tronder from this morning. I'm just calling to see how you're doing and what I should do with the car." "Max, thank you for calling. I seem to be holding on. You can keep the car for now. Franklin is in so much trouble that he won't need her for a while." "Trouble? I hope you didn't shoot him." "No, but he might prefer this option. He got arrested for trying to break into our house and apparently took a swing at one of the cops. You know he's a big guy, and the cop hit him with a stun gun. Then something happened while he was in prison. He doesn't want to talk about it, but I think he may have been attacked by another prisoner somehow. I wouldn't talk to him, and he ended up having to call his brother to post bail, and that means his whole family knows what's going on." "Wow, Molly. I can't say I feel sorry for him, but I feel sorry for you. What I really want to say, is that you made the absolutely right decision this morning not to look at the pictures of him cheating. If you have any chance of reconciling, these photos would make it a lot harder. Yeah, He finally came home a couple of hours ago, crying and telling me how sorry he was and begging me to let him stay at least for now. You know we have 2 little kids, so I'm going to try to figure this out. But life won't be easy for him. His own brother, who was a lawyer, told me that I should push for a prenuptial agreement, and he said he would help with that. Besides, I'm going to be in control of our finances, at least for a while. Franklin will be on a fairly short leash, and I plan to tug his collar frequently. Keep it up, Molly. I wish you all the best, and when you need to return the car, just call me. After they had finished their conversation, Max sat there, feeling a little envious of Molly. It's possible that Franklin has learned his lesson today. On top of all that had happened to him, while he was incarcerated, the fact that he was arrested and charged with assault for attempting to hit a police officer may have caused him a great deal of fear. For the sake of Molly and their children, Max prayed that this would be the case. At long last, he got behind the wheel and drove back to the motel where he was staying. He had one more task to complete before he attempted to get some rest, and that was to phone his daughters, Jane and Joan. "Hi, Daddy," it seems to him that Jane had responded to your question. Due to the fact that they sounded so similar to one another, it was almost as if they were identical twins. They attended the same college together, which was a highly expensive one, and they both received their nursing education. In any case, they did not appear to be identical to one another. They were certainly sisters, but they did not appear to be identical twins. Max frequently stated, although only to himself, that he was content with the fact that they were not equivalent to one another. He believed it would be even worse if 2 identical young women were to force him to buy a car, persuade him to stay out late, ask for money to go to Florida for spring break, or any other request that was being made at the time. Since they were so skilled at ganging up on him, he thought it would be even worse. "Daddy, please." But he also admitted again, only to himself, that he enjoyed spoiling them. "Janie, yes, you guessed correctly, of course, there was a 50-50 chance. What's the matter? Listen, tomorrow is Saturday, and I would like to invite you and your sister to have breakfast, well, let's call it brunch, maybe around 11 or so at that bistro on 4th Street we used to go to." He heard a commotion, and then she returned, saying, "That is very convenient for me." Wait a second, and then she said, "And Joan is fine as well. Can we?" The reason he swiftly interrupted her was because there were 6 or 7 of their friends present at the breakfast they had just finished eating. "Let's do this just the 3 of us, okay?" "Of course," Jane responded to the question. "But tell me what." Moreover, he interrupted her once more since he did not want to initiate a conversation over the phone, which was already fairly challenging even when they were communicating in person. "Listen. I had to get moving. It will be 11 o'clock. You are loved. I also want you to inform your sister that I adore her." As he hung up, he wished that she would not call Camila, but he was unable to tell her that. If she had known that, she would have phoned Camila right away. The time of 11 o'clock tomorrow morning would arrive in a short amount of time. After Max left the cafe, leaving her with his warning or curse or whatever to hire a lawyer, Camille's tears were hard to stop. She knew she had screwed up everything, her marriage, her family, her whole life. She knew that her daughters would find out, her parents would know, all her friends would know. She would probably lose Max and her home. And Max, poor Max, seeing her lying in their bed naked, probably with that damn Franklin who had a boner, this scene must have nearly killed Max. And Camille's tears continued. Finally, the waitress came over and asked if she needed to go to the ladies' room. Camila choked back her sobs and managed to say, "No, thank you." She paid the bill and left, heading to the house that would soon no longer be her home. She discovered some gin when she arrived, but it was just the right quantity. It was not enough to cause her to pass out, but it was too much to assist her in figuring out how to get Max back. After she drank it all, it helped her go asleep, and she hoped that some miracle would bring Max back to her. When Max's daughters arrived the following morning, he was seated in the bar at 11 o'clock. He spent the early morning hours reviewing and approving the copy of the divorce petition. After that, he traveled 2 hours from Charlotte, using that time to plan out how and what to say to Jane and Joan. But before we get into that, everything is going according to plan, hugs and kisses. How is school? Describe the work. After the food was ordered and consumed, the plates were cleared, and all of a sudden, there was a genuine conversation. "Dad, we are aware that something is wrong," Joan started off by saying. "You appear to be a little ill. Are you come to tell us that you suffered from cancer or some other illness? Where is Mom, if that is the case?" "Girls, yeah, I do have some particularly unfortunate news, but it is not physical in nature. No one is going to succumb to death." Then Jane stepped in and said, "And it's Mom. She did something bad. Does she have a young and powerful physique that Joni or I ought to be pursuing? Oh my gosh, did she run away with one of the lawyers who works for her firm?" They were caught aback by the silliness of the thought, and both of the girls burst out laughing. However, when they realized that their father was not laughing, they realized that they were wrong. Joan was unable to continue her worry while speaking out loud. "Dad, no, not Mom," she said. "Girls, pay close attention to what I have to say. There was a shift in Mom. It was her that cheated on me. However, this does not imply that she cheated on you by any means," Max clarified. "Yes, that's right, Daddy," Joan responded with tears in her eyes. "If her cheating is destroying our family, then yes, she cheated on us just as much as she cheated on you." The kids stood up and attempted to hug their father and each other at the same time. First, both of the girls started crying, and then Max started crying as well. "Dad, let's get out of here," Jane said. "There's a park about 2 blocks from here, and we'll have more privacy there." Max quickly paid the bill, and then they walked into the park, with a girl on each side of him, all of them clutching each other. "There's so much more privacy there," Jane remarked. "Tell us, Dad," Jane said after they had located a bench to both sit on. "We deserve to hear how bad it is," she said. "Doesn't she know that she cheated on you?" When Joan stepped in, she said, "We are quite mature and are able to handle this. During the time that I was driving here, I was trying to figure out what I should say to you." Max began, "I agree, you are both adults, and yes, you are right, your mother did cheat on all of us. I'm afraid I found my mother at home in our bed with another man, and she later admitted that there had been other men before him. I think I'm still in a bit of shock, but I know that she and I won't be able to recover from this. I've already talked to a divorce lawyer, and Mom is getting a divorce petition today." As they all contemplated the news and what their future would hold, there were additional tears shed, and then there was stillness. "Girls, no matter how bad it is, you need to put yourself in your schoolwork first. I have enough money to pay for your senior year here at Duke, and if either or both of you want to do graduate work, I suspect I can find some money for that too." But there is a quid pro quo here, they were looking at each other. What did he mean? "I'm happy to pay for your education, but I expect you to work hard and get good grades." "Yes, what Mom did makes it difficult to concentrate on school, but you told me that you are adults, and real adults, mature, disciplined people, can handle such adversity, right?" As they gazed at each other, they shed another tear, and then they held him. Joan supported him by saying, yes, Daddy, you are the best, and we absolutely, positively will not let you down," while Jane appeared to be thinking deeply about the message. "Dad, Joan is right. We won't let you down, but what about you? Will you be okay? What are you going to do?" Jane expressed her concern. "Well, you can think about a lot in a 2-hour drive. First, I want you both to know that what you said does not surprise me at all. I know you will continue to do well in school, and I will continue to be proud of you. As for me, what my mother did beat me up pretty bad. I could crawl into a hole and just, suffer, feel sorry for myself, try to find a way to make peace with your mom. But I realize that this doesn't suit me. I've spent my entire adult life caring for other people. So, what? 2 home runs out of 3 in terms of the women in my life. Not bad at all. That leaves me, and guess what? I look at this whole story with betrayal and divorce not as the worst thing in my life, but as a chance to start a new life, a whole new life dedicated to caring for one person, me." "Fine, Dad, really. I mean, if you really mean what you say, that's great," answered Joan in response. Jane exhibited a slightly more skeptical attitude. "Dad, what does all this really mean? New life? What work? For another pharmaceutical company? Are you buying a farm? What a good question, and I really have a good answer. No details yet, but this new life will be physical. In the future, I plan to participate in things like running marathons, climbing mountains, swimming across the Atlantic Ocean, climbing the Alps, and going on safari. What is it that I have planned for myself out of the million things that I have planned? While I am engaged in these activities, I can come across a lovely woman who is also engaged in the same activities. Who can say for sure? It's a damn shame, Dad, this. That was their father, not some opportunistic stallion, and both of the girls looked at him with their mouths open. This is incredible. While you were traveling here from Charlotte, did you truly think of all of this? Jane then inquired. Actually, to a certain extent. In addition to that, I didn't get a lot of sleep, and my mind was racing with a variety of thoughts. I could start drinking and feeling sorry for myself, but instead, I'm going to try to make the most of this mess and make the most of the situation. Please have faith in me, I'll be all right. As Max drove back to Charlotte, still in the gold Mercedes, he farewelled his daughters with further embraces, kisses, and tears. The girls immediately contacted their mother after watching Max drive away. The phone in the TR's house was answered by a voice that was shaky and said, "Hello. It is imperative that you put your phone on speaker. Let me introduce you to Joan and Jane, Mom. We had finished eating breakfast with our father, and that's when he broke some horrible news to us." Just what? What exactly did he say? Well, the word divorce was a terrible word, and the reason for it was because of your betrayal. The father provided us with a little bit more information, but that is pretty much it. Does this hold true? Oh, ladies, this is going to be challenging. A significant amount of time has passed since your father and I tied the knot, and this? An error like this. I did, in fact, commit a serious error. To be more precise, there are more than one. There is no doubt in my mind that we will prevail. Simply said, I need to allow your father some time to compose himself. Mom, Joan yelled out loud, listen to me. His father said the word divorce, but he did not mention correcting the mistake. Mom, he was referring to infidelity in his conversation. Well, from a purely technical standpoint, he is correct. Despite this, it does not mean that we are unable to remedy it. I promised him that I would not hesitate to do anything. It was Jane's turn to interrupt, Mom. The time had come. You are a liar, in my opinion. In his statement, he mentioned that he had already conferred with a divorce attorney. It was actually his statement that there was no going back for the two of you. We don't want to take sides, but you have to appreciate the truth. Joan and I don't want to take sides. Camila finally spoke, and her voice was hardly audible above a whisper. Joan and Jane stared at one another, wondering if they should have gone to Charlotte. Camila's voice was barely audible because she was speaking. I am aware of that. That is correct. I am quite aware that I have messed up and damaged my marriage. As far as I can tell, your father has a deep-seated hatred for me. The things that I've done are revolting. He advised me to retain the services of a legal representative, and he was correct in doing so. I am truly sorry, ladies. I am quite aware that it is upsetting for you as well. Don't be concerned about us, Mom, Joan said her mother. Everything will be all right with us, and I know that Dad is doing everything in his ability to make sure that everything is okay. You have a responsibility to look after yourself. It seems like a smart idea to obtain the services of a lawyer. If you require assistance, Jane and I are able to travel to Charlotte. Thank you very much, ladies. I like this very much. Yes, I will be okay. I simply require some time to adjust to the actions that I have taken. The call was terminated, and the girls were still at a loss for what to do. You know, Joan whispered to herself, it's funny, although it's not funny, but we're more worried about Mom, who created all this mess, than about Dad. They continued their conversation, and in the end, they came to the conclusion that they would not go home but rather let their parents deal with each other without their daughters standing in the way. She was a little hungover from the gin she had consumed the night before, and she was more than a little depressed after talking to her kids. Camila sat in her home in Charlotte, and she knew that she needed to get up, get dressed, and escape the house. When the doorbell rang, Camila opened it. A young woman appeared to be chewing gum as she stood on the threshold of the door. Do something, she thought as her thoughts wandered to the possibility of purchasing some further gin. Do you need my assistance? Camila interrogated. Affirmative, ma'am. Your name is Camila Tronda, and you are Max Trunk's wife. Why, certainly, that is it that I am. Why do you have this question? A woman approached Camila, and handed her a folder containing paperwork while taking photographs. Ma'am, you have been served, she stated. Just what do you mean? The question was posed by Camila, as the woman made her way back to her vehicle. Camila returned to the house and sat down at the kitchen table to look at the mysterious folder. When she saw the title of the first document, she almost fainted, a petition for divorce. She remembered Max's last words to her, "Get a lawyer." As she sat there looking at the familiar kitchen she had enjoyed with Max, she knew the happy days wouldn't come back after what she had done. Camila was right, she and Max did not return after her betrayal. She was still working at the same law firm, doing the same boring paperwork, and she dreamed. Years later, while sitting in the ballroom of an expensive hotel and watching Jane dance with her new husband, Camila mentally plunged into the past. When the girls were teenagers, she thought life was terrible. There were too many activities, too much teenage angst, and too many boys who were either too mean or, from Camille's perspective, too nice to the girls. Max was too busy with her assistant job, and lawyers were too boring. Life had been overwhelming at the time, but now she deeply missed it. She was still working at the same law firm, and she dreamed about the past. Camille stared at her beau, the flawlessly sweet middle-aged, punky, balding lawyer who had led her to Jane's wedding and celebration. "Camila, here is your wine," Camille said as she gazed at her beau. "The bride looks lovely, just like her mother." "You're really welcome, Carl. You have a kindness. And thanks for the wine." He was a sweet man, and she could imagine marrying him if he was interested, but he definitely wasn't Max. She couldn't help but look across the room at Max. Max had just returned from a mountaineering trip to Nepal, and Camila thought he looked like one of those bronze Greek god statues, tanned, incredibly fit, even more handsome than she remembered. Right now, he was smiling and laughing with Joan and her boyfriend, holding hands with a woman as beautiful and as fit as Max. Joan told her that Max had met the woman on another mountaineering trip somewhere in South America, and they had been traveling, sailing, and climbing together for several months. Just thinking about it made Camila feel sick to her stomach. Through the use of the word Camila, Carl attempted to get her attention. "You agree, Carl? I believe that it would be best for us to depart. It is not in your best interest to continue to drool over your ex-husband while you are here because you have already completed your responsibilities as the mother of the bride. I would venture to say that this is not a very positive thing for the connection that we have because of this. You are really kind, Carl, and you are completely correct. Let me go and say my goodbyes to my daughters, and then we will leave this place in a moment." Max genuinely noticed Camila as she was leaving the hall, and he felt a little pang of grief for their past days together. Camila hugged and kissed her daughters, wished the newlyweds the best of luck, and ignored Max and his new partner, despite the fact that it was difficult for her to do so. Joan posed a question to him while he was busy observing her. "I'm sorry, Joni, but what were you trying to say?" "Daddy, do you remember that strange-looking gold Mercedes that you were driving when you, Jane, and I had breakfast at Duke that morning? What happened to that car?" "Oh, Joni, that's a whole story that I won't bore you with. Let me just say that I borrowed that strange gold Mercedes from a friend, and I later gave it back to her. I believe that she sold it. It was a truly unfortunate vehicle. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you," Max said to his friend as they discussed their upcoming trip to the mountains. Subscribe to our channel. And then proceed to listen to the next story since the one you are currently listening to is nothing in comparison to the one that comes after it.